Hi Jessica, thank you for coming to Surgeons Hall. I was wondering if you could tell us about your cancer diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was in 2016, 2017. I was living down in Bristol, and like I was saying to you earlier, I was really enjoying being at the gym, and I just noticed I was starting to feel more fatigued. I wasn't sure if this is because I was going quite early in the morning before I was working, or otherwise, so I kind of ignored those feelings until I started to get really fatigued at work in the afternoon, so talking like 2, 3 p.m.
Yeah.
I'm in my early 20s, like this really shouldn't be happening, and then overnight I developed almost like an Adam's apple, so a really big lump here. Now I've never had like a pronounced Adam's apple or anything like that before, and it was a bit like, oh, that's really strange. Carried on working, carried on gymming until it got to the point where I was lifting weights and it was pressing on my windpipe, and I started to feel really dizzy and nearly passing out in the gym. So one day at work I went to a drop-in centre and they looked at me and said, okay, we need to send you to hospital now. And I went there and then on that day, and they did a needle aspiration. So that's where they get a needle and they put it into the skin behind this lump on my throat to take a biopsy, so a bit of the cells or skin or whatever's there, and send it off to the lab. And this happened 3 times, and each time it came back inconclusive.
Wow.
Repeating of the tests. And all this time I was feeling more fatigued, really not feeling well, not feeling myself. And eventually I moved from Bristol up to Glasgow, so near where we are now, and sought a second opinion. The surgeon saw me, it must have been, so I was a student in my master's, came in September, it must have been around then, of 2017, and he said, I think you have cancer. Didn't even do a biopsy and booked me in for surgery about a few days later, and did the biopsy, the surgery on my thyroid, which is where this lump was. And I hadn't even heard of a thyroid, it's not something that you think of every day. And so we did this operation, took half of my thyroid out. So for anyone else that doesn't know what a thyroid is, this gland, it looks a bit like a butterfly. That's what shape you can see in front of us here.
Yeah, we've got the thyroid with cancer here, so very similar to what you had done. And it almost sits like a bow tie across your windpipe.
And that explains why I was feeling a bit dizzy when I was lifting weights above my head or anything to do with my work, because that big lump was pressing on my windpipe. And this one here says about having a goiter. So I had a multi-nodular goiter, which is what they found when they did the first surgery. They found it was cancer, and it wasn't this half of my thyroid, which a thyroidectomy they removed. But unfortunately I needed a second surgery, and I had that on the 2nd of January. So a few months later, new year, new me. The thyroidectomy, a complete thyroidectomy. And that, was basically my journey to finding out I had thyroid cancer.
That must have been terrifying.
Yeah, it was, because I was studying here in Glasgow, and I was on my own, and to receive that diagnosis and to hear someone say, I think it's cancer, not knowing anything about the thyroid or really what that meant going forward. I think the scariest and the hardest part was when I was in Bristol and those tests came back inconclusive 3 times. Because on the 3rd time I had a particular doctor who said, we think you want to pursue this further in terms of getting a second opinion, because we think you want it removed for aesthetic reasons.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't like you were explaining about the thyroid and where it sits and it pressing on the windpipe. If I'm experiencing dizziness and when I'm lifting something in my day-to-day life, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And that should be looked into further. And it was only because my mum was there and she pressed for it to be investigated into further. That we did get the second opinion when I moved to Glasgow.
Yeah. No, that's a terrible thing to have to hear when you're going through this.
Yeah. Yes, and also hearing that you've got cancer it really does hit you and like a wave. I always equate it to when you go on holiday. I mean, not quite the same experience, but you step off the plane and that heat of somewhere, really hot country, hits you like a wave. You're like, and it takes you a second, your breath. And I was handed a leaflet that had a butterfly on, and they say your thyroid is like a butterfly. This is what it looks like. But it was the handing of this leaflet for something you've never heard of, like cancer, in a clinical setting, and being given that diagnosis on your own.
Cancer is such a big word, isn't it, for you to actually hear that, especially when you're only in your early 20s. It's, as I say, a terrifying thing to have to go through.
But I had heard about cancer, before, there's so many people that have cancer. My nana had died from cancer, my father had just been diagnosed with cancer, so there's a lot for our family as well. So I think I was carrying the burden of, not so much a burden, but the weight of being like, oh, now I have to also tell my mum and dad about this, and I really felt terrible for my parents. I couldn't get through to them on the day. I remember leaving the hospital and trying to ring them. I eventually got through to my brother, and he was like, I'll come and see you, like anything for you. And then everyone just rallied. So it wasn't so scary, and it wasn't so lonesome in the end.
And then you visited Surgeons Hall. Were you actually coming to find out more about what you had, or was it just a coincidence that you were visiting the museum?
Yeah, it was a coincidence actually. It was before I'd even fully got the diagnosis of the cancer. They obviously said it could be this. So I was processing all of that after that initial meeting with the consultant. And then I happened to be coming here. I love medical museums. I work in one. It's my love and interest. And I was just walking through the pathology area of the museum, seeing the fascinating specimens on display. And I happened to come across a thyroid specimen that had the word goiter on, and after they told me about, you have multinodular goiter, we think could be cancerous, just seeing it in person rather than on this cold, rather than on a leaflet that's been handed to you with a butterfly, rather than an actual image of what the gland is, what that looks like. It really stopped me in my tracks, and I thought, oh wow, that's what I have. Yeah, I can relate to it. Yeah, it's there. Like, unlike anything I've been given from a doctor, from any clinician or specialist that I've spoken to along this journey, it was there right in front of me. It confronted me, but not in a negative way. I didn't want to run away from it, or I didn't get overwhelmed. I just stood there like face to face with it and thought, wow, someone else has had this too, clearly. It was a really powerful moment for me.
That's amazing. And did it help you understand, you talked about that pressure on your neck, did seeing this help you understand what was causing that pressure? Yes,
it did. It helped me understand the shape of it, and what one looked like, and where it would orientate and sit, and why it was this pressing on my windpipe and why I experienced what I had. Almost kind of like justified it for me, especially considering the journey that I'd had leading up to then where I was being here in Surgeon Hall's museum, you know.
Yeah, so you definitely feel like this is a positive moment on your cancer journey?
Yeah, absolutely. It's 2025 now, you know, I still think about it. We've spoken about it. It was so powerful in that moment. It had such meaning. It's had such an effect on me in helping me come to terms with the diagnosis, helping me learn from it, helping me feel connected to it, to the diagnosis, to the cancer, to whoever this belonged to as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's really helped me in my journey, in my life. I'm forever grateful for that experience. Sorry.
Oh. So when you were given this diagnosis, were you given a prognosis? Were you told what the likely outcomes were going to be?
Yeah, so after the first surgery they did, when the biopsies came back and it was cancer, they said you have thyroid cancer, gave me the leaflet and showed me the butterfly leaflet and a DVD, and they said that I was one of the lucky ones because it was an easily managed, treated form of cancer. But obviously at the time I didn't feel very lucky at all.
No, not with that kind of diagnosis. That's a perfectly understandable feeling.
Yeah, and because they didn't really then go into much more about what that meant in terms of the next stages and the outcomes, like you were asking. They just said, if you would like more information, read the leaflets or watch the DVD. So again, in that cold clinical setting, there was no feeling of warmth or lucky. When you think of being lucky, you think of, oh, I'm so lucky, you know, like happiness and like you've won something. Well, guess what? You've won the cancer lottery because this is a lucky diagnosis. That was hard to hear.
And you were on your own for that diagnosis as well when you were in Glasgow?
Yeah, I just moved here to study museum education at Glasgow University. So I just moved and then received the diagnosis, and I received that on my own in the appointment. And then therefore after, for all the other appointments and for the surgeries, I was also on my own, partly by choice because my parents were so far away in New York, but also because my father wasn't well. So I was finding out on my own, going to the appointments on my own. And then when I came here, I was walking along and saw this, and I was by myself. But actually, I wasn't, because someone else had the same as me.
Yeah.
And that was that connection right there to this thyroid in a jar. But it's so much more than just the thyroid in a jar.
This is someone else who has had a similar experience to you that you can connect with.
Exactly.
And do you mind talking about where you are now? You know, how this has played out for you? How are you doing today?
Yeah, so I had obviously the full thyroidectomy. I had one surgery in 2017 and then the second in 2018. So a complete thyroidectomy. Got a little scar here, it's a very neat scar. And then afterwards they were concerned that I might have some lingering cancer in I think there's a parathyroid. And in some of my lymph nodes perhaps. So they were going to treat me with radioactive iodine. And then they didn't in the end, so I didn't need to get it done. But since then, I'm regularly monitored with blood tests, and I'm on levothyroxine. So that's a medication to replace the hormones that you lose through a thyroidectomy. And the levels are quite tricky to maintain. It's based on like your weight and your health in general, and so it fluctuates quite a lot. So my medication has fluctuated quite a lot since 2018, you're first put on quite a high dosage, which makes your heart pound. But now it's really level, but I still am getting my blood's tested, monthly. And there have been a few scares since, but the team in Leeds where I am now are sensational, and I'm in really good hands. And I will continue to be monitored for the rest of my life and on medication for the rest of my life as well.
Yeah, that medication just to replace the thyroid that you've had removed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really good that you came out of this and you've had this positive experience. Thank you so much for talking.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and it's just so nice to speak to you and to be able to get across to visitors and whoever else might be in this journey or had a cancer diagnosis, that places like Wohl Museum can provide a place to connect and to learn and to help you no matter where you are on that journey, or if you just want to learn about someone else that's being diagnosed as well. So it is a powerful learning tool that I'm fully advocate for.
Thank you very much.